Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Crime Story Diaries. Today we'll be examining a terrifying case, so I invite you to watch the video. Don't forget to leave your comments and likes. Kristi Johnson was born in 1981 in Santa Clara, California. She was the younger child in the family of Theresa and Kirk Johnson. Kristi had an older brother, Derek, who was a few years her senior. Shortly after Kristi's birth, the family decided to move from California to the small town of Saugatuck, located in the state of Michigan. Saugatuck was a quiet and picturesque place with a population of less than 1,000 people. It was a cozy and beautiful town with a quiet harbor. It seemed like the safest place one could find to build a happy future. The crime rate was extremely low. Local residents didn't even lock their doors, not fearing criminals. The local community was based on the fact that everyone knew each other. In childhood, Kristi, like many other little girls, dreamed of becoming a princess, beautiful, rich, and famous. She wanted to live happily ever after, like in a fairy tale. These childhood dreams later transformed into ambitions to conquer Hollywood and become famous. The Johnson family seemed close-knit and happy. However, the family idyll was disrupted when the Johnsons decided to divorce. This happened when Kristi was about 12 years old. Despite the divorce, the parents remained on good terms for the sake of the children. Kristi and her brother lived alternately with their father and mother, as required by the custody plan. Due to this situation, the girl quickly became involved in household chores. She started helping her mother from the age of 12. This included managing the family budget. Kristi tried to get any job to be independent and not ask her parents for money. Later, her older brother joined the army, after which he decided to become a career military man. At this time, the girl was studying in high school. Having become independent, Kristi took her life into her own hands. Her intelligence and natural beauty helped her in this. She was very cheerful, fun, and an interesting conversationalist. Kristi looked great, partly due to her active and healthy lifestyle. Her loved ones admired the girl's beauty and advised her to conquer Hollywood. Kristi loved sailing, surfing, and everything related to water the most. She engaged in these sports when she visited California to see her grandmother. However, upon returning to Michigan, Kristi always missed her favorite hobbies, and she needed time to readjust. In Saugatuck, she was passionate about theater, being a member of a small acting club. During the winter, the girl worked as a waitress in a local cafe. She became a real find for the establishment's owner, as she was very sweet, polite, and sociable, which attracted more visitors. At this time, the girl increasingly thought about leaving their tiny town of Saugatuck. The calm atmosphere of the province was not for her. Kristi believed she deserved more and wanted a different life than serving food in a cafe. She felt there were no great prospects for her in this town. In 1999, she graduated from high school. Finally, she had enough freedom to start building her life and her path to success. After considering her situation, the girl decided to set off in search of herself. She traveled to different cities, worked there, and tried her hand at various fields of activity. Eventually, she decided to settle in California in 2000, which she loved so much. Here, the climate was wonderful, and there were many more opportunities to realize her potential. At first, she moved in with her grandmother in the small resort town of Santa Maria, with a population of 100,000 people. But despite being close to all her favorite entertainments, Kristi first focused on important matters. First of all, she started looking for a job to support herself. This was very important to her. The girl got a job as a system administrator in the city's electric power company. Then she focused on her education. She decided to enroll at the University of California. The educational institution was quite far, a 40-minute drive from her grandmother's house. Kristi was admitted there and bought a car with the money she had earned earlier. But even with a car, driving so far was a problem. It took a lot of the girl's time. Therefore, Kristi began to look for work closer. This is how she first touched her dream, Hollywood. She managed to get a part-time job with a film crew that was planning to shoot a movie. Her experience performing in the theater group allowed her to fit into the new work environment. As a result, she was hired as an assistant on the set of a thriller. Here she met people who lived and breathed Hollywood. It was a real star moment for the girl from the province. She communicated with world-famous actors and directors and was incredibly happy. Christine simply couldn't believe that she was interacting with celebrities. She was literally absorbed by the world of cinema. This work inspired her so much that young Christine wanted to be closer to this field of activity. She enrolled in professional makeup courses where Hollywood makeup artists taught her. Having mastered these skills, she thought about becoming a makeup artist on a film set. For this, she was going to go to the city of her dreams, Los Angeles. Although it was quite a risky journey, curiosity was stronger than the fear of the unknown. The girl was drawn to Hollywood. As a result, she moved to Los Angeles, where several famous film studios are located. It was a real period of temptation for the young beauty, but she demonstrated the best rules of decency that a young girl is capable of. She did not lead a dissolute lifestyle, despite the popular trends in the community in which she found herself. She avoided parties and gatherings. The girl was quite modest. She had a boyfriend named Todd, whom she had met a couple of years ago, and they continued to communicate despite the distance. Then he moved in with her, and they decided to rent an apartment together in Los Angeles, starting in 2002. The young people did not yet have financial stability, so this was beneficial for both of them. It was not an easy adventure, but the girl did not despair and began to look for a new job for permanent employment. However, this was difficult. The girl only found various part-time jobs. There was no serious work. Most of their budget was earned by her boyfriend. Meanwhile, the relationship between Christine and Todd was getting worse and worse. Later, Christine complained to her mother that verbal arguments with her boyfriend increasingly ended with his physical impact. She fell into the trap of a toxic relationship that was financially constrained. Her mother began to look for a new place for her daughter so that she could move out. Christine ran away from her boyfriend, settling in a small apartment. She continued to study remotely. During this time, her father provided Christine with good financial support. He hoped that his daughter would finally find her place and calling in life, so he wanted to help her. By November 2002, Christine finally got a job at a mobile communications company, but this position was far from her ideals. Neither the field of activity nor the income met her expectations. In addition, the girl still could not find a normal place to live close to work. Her mother found a cozy house in Santa Monica, a town neighboring Los Angeles, which was to be shared with 2 other girls. However, it was located next to the beach, in a lively residential area. It was an ideal place to get on her feet, so Christine moved there. During this period, the girl transferred to Santa Monica University. Christine's dreams of Hollywood did not come true. She couldn't start building a career. Her relationship fell apart. She literally started her life from scratch. But the girl did not despair and continued to pursue her dream. On February 15, 2003, Christine was planning to go to a party. Beforehand, the young beauty went to the mall. She talked a lot with her mother on the phone, discussing plans for the future with her. Her mother, Terry, told her to choose a Valentine's Day gift for herself. This was the last call to loved ones that Christine made. The next day, on Sunday, February 16, 2003, her mother was waiting for a call from her daughter to tell her about the previous day. But the girl didn't get in touch. The woman tried to call her herself, but the phone was unavailable. At first, this didn't cause much concern, as her daughter could have been resting or at work and not hearing the call. However, the next day, February 17th, Christine still didn't get in touch. Around 9 o'clock in the morning, the woman called her daughter's workplace. She was always on the phone and answering, but this time her mother was answered by an answering machine. Then the mother called her manager, who said that the girl had not come to work. He also emphasized that Christine was a very reliable employee and had no delays or absences in the last 3 months. So her absence surprised everyone. However, they also couldn't contact her. According to the manager, the employee was last seen on February 14th. One of her friends at work said that the girl was going to some party. The mother of the missing girl visited her daughter's social media page, but found no useful information about the party there. The girl had not posted any photos from there, although previously she actively maintained her page, literally documenting every step of her life. She also checked the transactions on her daughter's bank accounts. but since she stopped communicating, no transactions had been made. The mother called all the hospitals, but Christine was not registered anywhere. After this, on February 17th, the mother decided to call the Santa Monica Police Department and reported the disappearance of her 21-year-old daughter. Investigators checked whether a similar girl had been involved in traffic accidents during these days, but nothing could be found. The neighbors of the young beauty also hadn't heard anything about her after her disappearance. The police contacted her ex-boyfriend Todd, with whom she had had a rather turbulent and sometimes violent romance. They considered the version that he might have found his runaway lover and done something to her, but he denied seeing her. The girl's neighbors gave superficial information that they had seen Christine on Saturday, February 15th, and she was going to a party, but they didn't know who she was going with or where exactly. The missing girl's colleagues had earlier told her mother about this. This was the first lead in the case, and investigators began to check this information. Later, a new detective joined the case. As soon as he opened the collected records, the photo of the missing girl struck him. The crime victim looked very similar to another previously missing girl who was found dead in 1995. That girl was an aspiring model, and she was invited to a photo shoot for the glossy magazine photographer. But this photo shoot was not destined to happen. The victim's name was Linda Sobeck, and her killer was photographer Charles Rathbun. He deceptively lured the beautiful blonde out of town where he raped and killed her. But the policeman also knew that Linda's killer was already in prison at this time and physically could not be involved in this case. However, it could be a copycat of Charles, who was inspired by his ingenuity and acted according to his scheme. The detectives had to get at least something related to the girl, so her car, a white Mazda Miata, was put on the wanted list. In parallel, while communicating with the mother, the investigators found out more details about the girl's ex-boyfriend Todd and also learned about her new boyfriend named Lucas. However, the mother knew very little about Lucas. She didn't even know his last name, which complicated the search. More than 48 hours had passed, and this is a critical period for searching for missing persons. The police seriously assumed that Christine might already be dead. They began to study the billing data of the missing girl's mobile phone. It became known that the last outgoing call from her phone was made at 5:34 p.m. on February 15th. She called the directory service at number 411, which could mean that she was in trouble, trying to clarify an address or phone number. The dialogue lasted about 3 minutes, which means it could have been quite important communication for the police case. But it was impossible to find out the exact content of the conversation, as these calls were not recorded. After this call, the girl's mobile phone discharged. The last time its location was recorded was in the area of Ventura Boulevard. After this, the police contacted the media to involve them in the investigation. The headlines immediately featured news about Christine's disappearance with a hint of similarity to Linda's murder. Investigators searched the apartment where Christine lived, looking for possible clues. They found a receipt from a lingerie store dated February 15th, when the girl disappeared. The police found out that Christine continued to communicate with her ex-boyfriend despite his aggressive behavior. She sometimes visited him, and the last visit took place on February 7th. But the first truly serious lead was discovered by detectives while examining information from the missing girl's email. On February 13th, Christine sent a message to the coordinator who was organizing the party. In it, she noted that she was looking forward to the event and was going to buy a ticket. She was informed that all seats were sold out, but they put her on a special waiting list. This is a common tactic when organizers of such events with celebrities want to deceive visitors and offer them VIP tickets at an inflated price. The police eventually found Christine's new boyfriend Lucas and talked to him. He said that he last saw Christine on February 14th, the day before her disappearance. They spent the evening watching a movie together and then said goodbye. The young man successfully passed a polygraph test, had an alibi, and did not arouse any suspicion from the investigators. After this, the detective spoke with her ex-boyfriend Todd, but he also had an alibi. The guy was out of town, which was confirmed by several people. Of all the versions, The police were most interested in the party that Christine was heading to and did not return from. They believed that the key to solving the girl's disappearance lay here. The investigators contacted the event organizers and were shocked. It turned out that Christine did not buy a ticket and did not show up at this party. But where could she have gone then? To reconstruct the timeline of events on that fateful evening, the police checked the transactions paid with the missing girl's bank card. Thanks to this, law enforcement officers learned about and checked all the stores where Christine had been that day. They looked for recordings from surveillance cameras that could have captured unusual events or some clues. This check took a lot of time. While the police were studying all the information, an alarming call came into the police. A woman named Susan Murphy reported a suspicious person. She told a brief story about meeting a man named Victor Thomas in a store, who posed as a representative of a film company that was conducting a casting for a new James Bond movie. She said that he pressured her, invited her to the role of Bond girl, admiring her beauty. He urged her to participate in the casting, but she found him suspicious, and the woman managed to refuse at the last moment. As a precaution, her husband, who was a former police officer, went to meet with her. He personally spoke with Victor and tried to get information about the man's intentions. However, Victor fled without providing any valuable information. But Susan checked everything she knew about him, and it turned out that he was lying. Victor Thomas had nothing to do with the film industry. Such a person didn't exist at all. Presumably, the man made up this information, just like Linda Sobek's killer, and in this way wanted to meet a beautiful girl, but for unknown purposes. Although Susan's story ended well, Victor was still at large and could continue his schemes. Therefore, this information needed to be urgently verified, and Victor needed to be found. He might have had evil intentions. Investigators checked all the stores where Christine had shopped on the day of her disappearance, checked the camera recordings, but found nothing interesting. Then they decided to go around the stores and talk to the staff. In conversation with the sellers, the police gave a description of Victor, who was harassing beautiful girls. And in one of the stores, the seller said she had seen a similar person, but the woman couldn't give any more valuable clues. An artist arrived at the scene to compose a sketch of the suspect. The search for Christine was gaining momentum. The police sent dogs and volunteers to the area where she had last made contact and called the directory service. Patrols and volunteers, meanwhile, were looking for the car and the missing girl herself. The police received many reports that a similar car had been seen somewhere, but all of this turned out to be false. On February 24th, an important call finally came to the police. In the parking lot located near the shopping center where Christine had been shopping, they found her car, a white Mazda Miata. A forensic expert arrived at the scene, conducted a thorough examination, collected fingerprints and all the evidence he could find. Inside the cabin in the back was a bottle of water. They also found the missing girl's mobile phone on the front seat. But the real surprise awaited the investigators when they spoke with the parking lot security guard. The man remembered that there had been a small incident with this car. The car arrived at the spot at 5:45 p.m., but it was reserved for another client. A man got out of the car and, upon learning this, behaved aggressively in response to the guard's warning. He simply threw the car keys at him and left without any explanation. There was no one in the car. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras in the parking lot, so it was impossible to see the car driver. There were no leads, so the detectives returned to analyzing the girl's purchases that day and were stunned. On the day of her disappearance, Christine bought an outfit that was identical to the one described by Susan. When Victor invited her to the casting, he asked Susan to buy the shortest black miniskirt possible, a white shirt, stockings, and shoes. All these items were paid for with Christine's bank card. The police couldn't believe it was a coincidence, which meant she could have fallen for the scammer's bait, whose intentions remained unclear. Almost the same as Susan did, but fortunately, she was accompanied by her husband. However, there was no information about Victor, and the investigators didn't know how to track him down. The police again turned to the girls with whom the missing girl lived. They remembered that Christine was indeed going to some casting, but they couldn't remember the details. During the conversation, they recalled that it was definitely related to James Bond. They said that Christine was very excited about this event, and the description of her outfit in which she left home, a shirt and mini skirt, exactly matched the officers' concerns. Christine was afraid of being late for the audition, which was scheduled for 5:30 p.m. She was in that same revealing outfit that the villain Susan had asked to wear, and probably Christine. Detectives continued to review the camera footage over and over again to find Victor, and finally managed to find him in the store where employees mentioned him. But the quality of the material was so poor that facial features could not be discerned. However, this was already a lead. With the help of witness testimonies, investigators could reconstruct the probable appearance of the criminal. By February 26th, a composite sketch of the main suspect in the disappearance of the young beauty was compiled. One of the experienced detectives who reviewed the case materials recognized Victor Paleologos in it, who had recently been released on parole, namely on January 20, 2003. He had previously been convicted of a sex crime. In his turbulent criminal past, there was an episode when he lured a woman named Christine Clujan to his apartment in exactly the same way. He invited her to a party where there would be many celebrities. When she arrived, it was quiet and empty. He began to harass her, and when the woman resisted, he attacked. The criminal used a rope, strangled her, and then wanted to tie her up to rape her. However, the victim gathered her strength, broke free, ran out of the apartment, and was able to ask the neighbors for help. Victor Paleologos used the same bait for his victims in the form of promises to conduct a casting or participate in a party. This was his standard scheme. Here, near the Walk of Fame, it worked flawlessly. Many girls came to Los Angeles in search of their Hollywood dream, and criminals took advantage of this. The first time the criminal got away with attacking a girl with just a suspended sentence. Then there was an attempt to rape Katie DeBuono in 1998, where he introduced himself as Brian, a film producer. For this attack, he got off with a very short term. There were also grounds to believe that he was involved in embezzlement of funds in the company where he had previously worked. In addition, many other victims were identified, women whom he tried to rape. However, all complaints to the police somehow got him off the hook because the victims had no evidence. Once he attacked an ex-girlfriend when he broke into her house. This was also an unsuccessful crime of a sexual nature. But the criminal took money and valuables from the apartment. But even this crime went unpunished. He got off with just a suspended sentence. Later, there was a more serious episode. He lured a girl named Heather into a trap. As with others, he persuaded her to dress in a manner that apparently excited him the most. Then he tried to tie her up and rape her. The girl managed to break free. Somehow she pushed the criminal away with the sharp heel of her shoe. This gave her a few seconds to run out and get to her car. She reported him to the police. For this crime, Victor received 2 years, but on January 20th, 2003, he was released on parole. This was just 3 weeks before Christine's disappearance. It turned out that, barely released, the criminal was back to his old ways. By the time the police began hunting for him, he was already under arrest. This time, he had stolen a BMW X5 from Beverly Hills and was trying to sell it with fake documents. After being detained in the theft case, they found a wallet on him with a whole bunch of stolen IDs, credit cards, and other documents. Victor Paleologos matched the type of criminal in the case of Christine's disappearance and also acted according to the same scheme. Everything added up. Therefore, the police decided to show his photo to Susan, who had managed to avoid being attacked thanks to her husband. At the police station, the girl immediately chose his photo among others, and then at the identification, she also singled him out and said that she immediately recognized Victor, although it was obvious that he tried to change his appearance. The man slouched a bit, extended one arm longer than the other, arranged his hair differently, but the deception was uncovered. In a separate check, Susan's husband, who had tried to detain the criminal, also recognized him. Unfortunately, the parking lot guard where the missing girl's car was found couldn't identify the criminal, as he saw him quickly from afar, in the dark, and didn't get a good look at his face. Victor was behind bars at that moment, but on the day of Christine's disappearance, he was free. During the interrogation, the criminal denied any involvement in Christine's disappearance and denied communicating with Susan. although there was all evidence to the contrary. Victor refused to talk to the detectives without a lawyer. He cited that he had recently been released on parole and was afraid that they wanted to frame him. Therefore, the investigators were gathering evidence against him. Soon, a new witness appeared. It was a real estate agent who had been working with Victor for the last few weeks and found his behavior strange. The suspect was looking for a house worth up to $700,000 through him. They visited several properties every day. This continued until news came about the disappearance of documents and keys from one of these houses. However, the realtor at that time didn't even think that his client could be the thief. Now, when he saw his photo in the police report, everything fell into place. The witness also identified the criminal. According to him, they last met just a day before Kristine's disappearance. On this day, Victor behaved strangely. He was somewhat nervous. In one of the houses shown, he went to the toilet and shouted from there, apparently checking the soundproofing. The police suggested that in this way he could be selecting a place with good soundproofing for committing crimes. The police examined each of the houses that the perpetrator had visited. First of all, this house, to which Victor paid special attention. As it turned out, this house was located in the area where the missing girl's phone was last pinged, which was also suspicious. The police were looking for traces, any evidence that could point to Kristine. Perhaps her body was in the house, but they found nothing. Meanwhile, searches were also going on in his apartment. Photos of women in his favorite outfit were found on Victor's computer. It was the same miniskirt, white shirt, stockings, and high-heeled shoes. By this time, the investigation had been going on for 12 days, but the family of the missing girl still hoped for her return home alive. And Victor kept denying everything, and was in no hurry to share information with the detectives. He only confirmed that he had seen Kristine, but then she left, and the man didn't see her anymore. Victor Paleologus was born in 1962 in Pennsylvania. He had an ordinary family. The man was the youngest of 5 brothers, entered college and received a bachelor's degree, after which he went to Los Angeles to study in graduate school. He was married from 90 to 93. Interestingly, there are grounds to believe that the criminal tried to poison his wife in 1991 when she reported him. His attempts to organize a restaurant business failed. The image of a man offended by the whole world who had fallen into crime was emerging. His fetish with beautiful women probably forced him to cross a dangerous line, and he began to attack them for the purpose of rape. Regarding the evening when Kristine disappeared, the criminal, together with his lawyer, provided an alibi. Victor was meeting a friend at a restaurant. They were having dinner. This information was indeed confirmed. But the police knew that despite this, he had enough time to play out another drama with a new victim and kidnap her. On March 1st, the police received a call from a new witness. The man claimed that on February 15th, he had seen the missing girl. She allegedly stopped near his house and was looking for a mansion that looked like a castle. The man himself didn't know where it was, but his wife heard the conversation and told her where to go. This happened around 5:30 p.m. Now it became clear what the call to Foro Neon was about. The girl was trying to find the way to a house that looked like a castle and called the directory. The police had a new lead, a house that looked like a castle. It was in a similar house that Victor was checking the soundproofing. Everything pointed to him. While the investigators were working with this information, a new event occurred. On March 3, 2003, 4 teenagers were walking through the Hollywood Hills. They were admiring the beautiful view of Los Angeles from the height when one of them approached the edge and saw a strange object about 100 meters below. The teenagers began to peer. It seemed to them that it looked like a mannequin. The boys began to descend but couldn't reach it. However, they got close enough to understand that it wasn't a mannequin, but a human body. The young witnesses couldn't decide for a long time what to do, as they didn't take mobile phones with them. They decided to head to the police and on the way met a woman who was walking dogs. The teenagers told her about the creepy find. She managed to get closer to make sure it was true. The victim's legs were tied and wrapped in blue fabric. She was wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt. The hands were tied behind the back, and on the right wrist remained a hair tie. Below the waist were torn stockings. The woman was frightened by what she saw and called the police. Soon, police officers and rescuers arrived at the scene, who with great difficulty were able to retrieve the body from the Hollywood Hills. Presumably, the criminal hoped that the body would never be found here. This might have happened if it weren't for the curious teenagers who accidentally wandered into such a hard-to-reach area. The forensic expert was able to identify the body as the missing Kristi Johnson. The victim was found near the house that Victor had liked so much during the viewing with the realtor. The police informed Kristi's parents about the tragedy. They were beside themselves with the pain of loss. Multiple bruises and scratches were found all over the murdered girl's body, indicating her desperate resistance. The condition of the body was poor. It had significantly decomposed, having been in the heat for many days. Also, it had rained for one day. The face was especially unrecognizable due to numerous injuries, and also because the head was tilted down. The girl had a large bruise on her head and in the neck area. They were the result of a skull injury and strangulation, which were considered the cause of death. The detectives were sure that Victor Paleologos was behind the murder. However, they needed to prove that Victor really didn't have an alibi at the time of death. For this, the police went to his friend Joey, with whom he supposedly had dinner that evening. However, it turned out that it wasn't a friend, but an acquaintance. Upon detailed questioning, it also turned out that they were supposed to meet much later than the time when the meeting with Kristi took place. According to the acquaintance, they met Victor by chance the day before. On February 15th, he was late for the meeting, arriving around midnight, although they were supposed to meet much earlier. Victor had scratches on his face, which he explained as an accidental injury during the move. The police approximately reconstructed the chain of events that preceded Kristi Johnson's disappearance. According to the investigation, he picked up his victim at the shopping center where he often prowled. The man saw a beautiful young girl and decided to act. As usual, he introduced himself to her as a film industry worker and offered the girl to audition for the role of James Bond's girl. He was very convincing in this. Acting according to his scheme, Victor paid the girl many compliments and explained that she was perfect for this role. Given the ambitions and youth of the young beauty, she believed the villain and couldn't refuse. The criminal arranged a meeting in one of the houses he had visited with the realtor, explaining that the casting was taking place there. Kristi, suspecting that she had fallen into a trap, prepared for the casting, dressing in the clothes the perpetrator had asked for, and arrived at the place with a slight delay as she got lost on the way and contacted the directory service. This is how she fell into a deadly trap from which she never escaped. At the meeting, she became the object of harassment, but put up desperate resistance, scratching his face. She had nowhere to run, and the man still turned out to be stronger. So Victor overcame her, raped the girl and killed her so that she wouldn't report him. First, he hit her on the head and strangled her, and then threw the body in the Hollywood Hills. The most terrible thing was that the blunt head trauma and strangulation did not cause her death immediately. She only lost consciousness, and the criminal thought she was dead. When the killer dropped her on the rocks, she fell from a considerable height and received even more injuries. Then she regained consciousness. Kristi was slowly and painfully dying in this place, never receiving help, and only after some time did the victim die. On May 12, 2003, the district attorney brought charges against Victor, accusing him of kidnapping, rape, and first-degree murder. However, the defense was fully prepared to defend the client's freedom because there was no direct evidence against him. The prosecution faced a difficult battle, so forensic experts used all the most weighty arguments. The defense disputed the time of death, pointing to insects found on the body. However, all the similarities with previous victims and attacks that the criminal had were voiced. These cases were so identical that they simply had to be highlighted in court. Preparation for the trial dragged on, so Victor Paleologos appeared before the court only in July 2006. The defense emphasized that the prosecution had virtually no physical evidence. No DNA, fingerprints, surveillance camera recordings linking Victor to the victim. This was explained by the fact that the body was found 2 weeks after the disappearance, and during this time it had decomposed significantly, so all evidence was destroyed. However, when all the witnesses accusing Victor of harassment spoke at the trial, the advantage was on the side of the prosecution. They all talked about how experienced a manipulator the man was. He was so convincing that even the most distrustful, like Susan Murphy, initially believed him and agreed to participate in the casting, not suspecting what awaited them. It seemed that no one had any doubts that this was his handwriting, and it was the defendant who killed Christine. Therefore, the criminal used his trump card. To avoid the death penalty, he decided to make a deal with the prosecution and plead guilty to a lesser crime. Now it remained for the victim's loved ones to accept this deal. At that moment, the trial had already been going on for 3 weeks and was making little progress. Its outcome was uncertain. After all the grief experienced, the family of the deceased was willing to make concessions to bring him to justice. However, on the day of the verdict, the defendant wrote an 11-page petition to the judge asking to withdraw his guilty plea. Fortunately for everyone, it was no longer possible to cancel it. Victor Paleologos was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life imprisonment with the right to parole after 25 years. This case left a deep mark on the lives of everyone involved, from Christine's family and friends to the investigators and witnesses who helped bring her killer to justice. Traditionally, thank you for watching and remind you that it would be great if you support the video by liking and subscribing to the channel.